would say I would describe myself not primarily as a chemist or as someone who works for a pharmaceutical company, but someone who's a human being who sees all the and experiences to some extent the problems that disease and suffering bring on the human race. I have a great aunt who died of Alzheimer's disease. One of my favorite cousins died of brain cancer a few years ago, and one of my brothers lives with type 1 diabetes. And so, the reason I come to work every day is primarily thinking of those people and how to, if there's some way to alleviate some of the issues that they face day to day in life, that's worth going to work for. So orphan diseases are diseases that affect a relatively small percentage of the population, typically much significantly less than 1% or 1% of the population. There are several thousand orphan diseases that exist. Many of them, in fact the majority of them, probably affect less than a few hundred people or less in the United States. These are diseases that are underserved in a sense because there's not a lot of profit margin and all that kind of stuff that can be associated with treating them. But it turns out that there are opportunities a lot of times if you're going after a larger disease to be able to use the same treatments to work in smaller populations, and it can have a benefit for patients and the physicians treating them, and et cetera. So one of the things that the pharmaceutical industry has started to do is use orphan indications as a means to get drugs approved faster and also then benefit these patients that are suffering and that have very few options available to them. So one area where orphan diseases are very prevalent is in the autoimmune disease space. There are several thousand, is my understanding, autoimmune diseases that are orphan in nature. And so there are opportunities when big pharmaceutical companies are developing treatments for larger autoimmune diseases such as lupus or rheumatoid arthritis to be able to experiment and try some of these new medicines in orphan diseases. And the benefit, it turns out that in the autoimmune space, many of these medicines do work in a few orphan diseases and allow for quicker registrations, potentially, of these new medicines, and also hope for groups of people that really are ignored because of the small numbers of them suffering from these various orphan diseases. Doctors will oftentimes find out about a treatment that's coming along, let's say for a larger disease such as rheumatoid arthritis. They might see some disease linkage between, let's say, something like rheumatoid arthritis and a very small, a disease that's in a much smaller percentage of the population. And oftentimes they can use these treatments to experiment a little bit with their patients based on some hypothesis that they have that something that works against disease A, which is a big disease, would also work in an orphan disease. You put a good frame around treatments, right? Why does the pharmaceutical industry even exist? It's to help patients, right? It's to make a difference in the lives of patients so that more children can grow up seeing their fathers and mothers, right? Fewer fathers and mothers are burying their children, right? And so when you put that frame around there, then what it does is, certainly from a financial perspective, you've got to go after, larger indications that affect the most number of people, right? But when you put the ultimate frame of helping as many people as you possibly can around it, then when you're working together with physicians that are maybe specializing in various orphan diseases, right, and you increase the communication, right, with them, then all of a sudden now you open up avenues that you would never had before in terms of being able to treat patients. So again, with that overall missional frame, right, of serving patients, this is a vehicle by which you can have a bigger impact than what you would have imagined beforehand. A quality decision, right, ultimately is something that's going to benefit as many people as possible. A quality decision is going to be one where you understand all the trade-offs going on and you figure out a position to be in, right, where everybody can benefit. So in the case of treating orphan diseases, right, it's a benefit. In fact, I'll end with the pharmaceutical industry, right? It's a benefit for the patient, clearly, it is a benefit for the physician because now they have better options, right, to treat their patients, and frankly, they look better in the eyes of their patients, right? They're more effective. With the insurance companies, right, or let's say government agencies that are, such as so Medicare and Medicaid, right? If you can give somebody a shot that actually cures them, right, or completely wipes out the effects of the disease versus just having a very minimal impact, well, that can lower your costs significantly, right? So it benefits the insurance agencies, it benefits the government, the Medicares, the Medicaids. And then finally, it benefits the pharmaceutical industry because these are vehicles by which we can get drugs approved faster, right? And when they're approved faster, then there's other opportunities that, there's more awareness of them to the general medical community, right? And there's options for them that didn't exist before, and that's a benefit for us. So one question I will get sometimes is, do I work in the pharmaceutical industry? Did I spend all that time going to school to become a chemist and to work on new medicines primarily for the patient or primarily to be profitable? And in one sense, it's difficult to answer that question, not because I don't see those two components being completely separated, right? Now, certainly, with what I've told you about my family, right, and seeing family members of mine suffer, that is the primary reason to be in this field, right, is to help people out. And then, if you create value, you create value, right? If you make a difference, you're probably not going to starve to death, okay? So, but yeah, in the end, if you're doing something for the goal of patients, right, and you're creating a difference, then everything else takes care of itself.